And she's like, man, this is really like a hard crowd. And I'm like, this sucks. So I jumped off of Poshmark. I didn't sell one thing. I jumped off of Poshmark, went to Whatnot. Within 5 seconds of being on, I had 45 people in my show and we sold out. It was a sold out show. The same stuff that I was running on another platform.
This is the Paycheck to Daycheck Reselling Podcast.
I'm Liz.
And I'm Ashley.
Together, we have been making money online collectively for over 10 years.
Our mission is to help you start, learn, and grow a reselling business and to inspire you to turn your paycheck into a daycheck.
The world is changing, and we want to help you change with it.
Welcome back to another episode of the Paycheck to Daycheck podcast. Today we have an amazing guest. She might look a little familiar. This is Ashley. Her handle is Revibe Tribe on all platforms. Ashley was actually our very first guest on the podcast when we first started out. So she came on to talk about her consignment business and how she runs that. And today we have her back on to talk about live selling, specifically on Whatnot. She has been on Whatnot for a hot minute. She's doing very well. She posted her like end of the year numbers at the end of 2023, and that kind of caught my attention. Like we need to speak to her and get her professional, advice on selling on Whatnot. Ask some questions of her because Liz and I get questions asked of us all the time. Neither of us sell on Whatnot or Poshmark Live. So welcome, Ashley. Thank you so much for coming back.
Thanks for having me back. I wouldn't be on any other podcast. It's my favorite. It's my favorite one.
We really appreciate it. So We're going to dive right in. So why don't you start us off by telling us how long you've been on Whatnot for and a little bit about how you have that side of your business set up, the success you've had live selling, just kind of a little rundown.
So when Whatnot first came out, I was initially like, no, we're not doing that. Like, that's not. And then my husband, we were talking, I'm like, there's this new app, people live selling. He's like, you'd be great at that. Like, you love being behind a camera. Like, my secret dream is to be on SNL. So it's like, I get to do stand-up comedian and sell stuff at the same time. So it's like, I'm all over it. But, so I started probably about a year and a half ago. And we were rolling really hard before the hurricane happened. And we were doing shows like 3-4 days a week. And then the hurricane happened. We kind of took a break and now we're back on it. So typically I try to do at least 2 to 3 shows a week. You have little kids, so sometimes that doesn't work. But yeah, like I'm really loving the community over there. It's a completely different vibe versus like eBay or Poshmark or even the Poshmark live shows. It's just a different vibe there. And I just feel so much more at home there. So like, if I had a choice to like change my entire business model, I would stick to strictly live selling if I could.
Awesome. Wow. That's kind of shocking to me. I know that you kind of started out with like the, like on Poshmark and eBay and, then your consignment side. So what is it about live selling that you love so much? Like, why would you change your whole business to that?
I like the fast pace of it. The only reason I think I wouldn't is because of my ability to not show up sometimes. Like life gets in the way. So it's nice to have that Poshmark and eBay going in the background for the days that I can't show up. But the fast pace of it, being able to like communicate with your buyers live. And there is just something so addicting to watching the price go up as you're holding it and explaining it. And then you're like, it has pockets. And it's like, $5 more. I don't know. There's just something so addicting to being able to sell live and like watch your stuff leave like the same day, out of your warehouse or out of your inventory. Like there's just something so sweet about that.
Awesome. Okay. So the items that you're selling on Whatnot, are these items that people are consigning to? Are these different items? So how do you have your inventory separated? How does that work?
So this is kind of a bigger answer. So sometimes we source specifically for Whatnot. So we will go and buy like half pallets or pallets and then flip those with the intention that they are Whatnot only. We have consignment clients, which are mostly resellers. So we resell for mostly resellers. Our consignment model is for other resellers who can't sell their inventory. So after 90 days, any smart business person is like, hey, it didn't sell for me. I tried it with you. It's not selling with you. Or I didn't try it with me and I just sent it to you. But after 90 days, I don't really care what it goes for. Throw it up on Whatnot. Start everything at X amount of dollars. And they like it because they get paid the same day. So Whatnot, after a certain amount of sales, you get paid out the same exact day. So they like the idea of like, hey, that inventory's gone and I'm already paid out for it. Like, I love this. I do have clients that send me boxes specifically just for Whatnot, which is really cool.
Okay.
And most of my clients give me full kind of discretion to start it at whatever I see fit, which is really nice because they trust me, which is really cool. And then anything in our personal inventory that is like owned by us, Revibe Tribe, after 90 days, we try to push it. So I kind of look at Whatnot as like its own entity, like it's almost like its own business. And I have a hard time like kind of meshing the two together because it's so different than what I do in my day to day at the warehouse.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you've been on there for just over a year then, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we're coming up on a year and a half maybe because I
Okay.
think I started in October. So,
Do you have an idea of how many shows you've run since you've started on there?
oh geez,
I know
no,
I didn't
it's
prep you for that
probably over
question.
100. It's definitely over 100.
No worries.
Definitely over 100 because at one point we were running 3 to 4 shows a week.
Okay.
So yeah, probably over 100.
Okay. Wow, that's awesome. All right. So talk to us a little about like how Whatnot operates. Like what are the selling fees on there? Like talk to us about like the back end of selling on there and why it works so well.
Sure. So Whatnot is the cheapest of the platforms. Like it's cheaper than eBay. It's cheaper than Poshmark. The issue is you don't get to set the price. So like you can, right? You can set the price to whatever you want, but things that are typically lower tend to sell on their lower starts. So I think you need to work it into your business model because Whatnot takes 10% plus 30 cents a transaction. So you can pay for the shipping or you can choose to have your clients pay for the shipping. You pay for the giveaways and you pay for the shipping on the giveaways. So it kind of evens out, but I personally love it because it's instant payouts. The commission is super small. And the only downfall about it is if you start something at 5 and it goes for $5, like you need to make sure that you can account for that in your business. Like don't start things that you can't at the price that you can't afford. Like make sure you're in the green on whatever you're starting on or know
Okay.
that people want it.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about that then. How do you determine what to start something at? Like, in my experience in watching live shows, it does seem like if you advertise lower starts, that sort of draws in more viewers, not necessarily more sales, but people do seem to like that, dollar starts or whatever. But based on what you just said, especially if you have consignment clients, you can't start everything at $1. So how do you determine what you're starting your items at?
So I think it depends on what the item is and how many people are in my show. Now, if I notice that the show is kind of so we do different shows. So I think it also depends on kind of the vibe that we're going in with the show initially. Like if we're doing designer stuff, most things are going to start at $15. Have I run Gucci and Chanel at $1? Yes. Did it sell for over 100? Also, yes. But I knew that it was going to go, and I knew that we had multiple people interested. Like I would never if I had 2 people in there and I'm like, let's run this Gucci for $1. Like I would never do that. So I think it's also like reading the room, if you will, on those starts. The lower starts do get a following because we have a ton of resellers on the platform that are sourcing for their business. And so if I can make a profit on the stuff that I'm sourcing personally and I'm in the green and it's like by a decent amount, like heck yeah, like let's start them at $1. Let's just get them out. Like, especially if people are bidding. So I think you need to be able to read the room and
Okay.
then use your discretion to start what you think.
Okay.
But do
And
not sell Talbots for $15 because nobody's going to bid.
so you might decide like once you hop on the show what you're gonna start items at then.
Mm-hmm. And also I kind of have a good idea of what's going to be in that show. So we run a couple different shows. So we do a lot of Rent the Runway. And we typically start those at a certain price point. We'll do designer shows, which is only designer used items. We start those at a specific price point based on damage or, if it's new or what have you. And then we also do a return show, which is actually like a fan favorite, where once a month we will run all of the returns that came in that month because we just pile them in the front of our warehouse. And so like I'll pull like Gucci, and then the next one will be like Target new with tags. And then we'll pull like, I don't know, like Chanel or Tory Burch flats. And so like people love it because there's like a little bit for everybody. And so those are really cool because I'm like, well, if I get 2 runs in the comments that you want me to run these Tory Burches at $1, I will, but I have to have 2 runs. And then like, you'll just see like run. And then they sell, for 40 or 60 bucks. So it's cool.
Awesome. Okay. That makes sense. All right. So a little while back, you mentioned something about the giveaways and how, you're paying the shipping on the giveaways. How do you just talk to us about that? Like, do you have to do a giveaway in each show? What items do well as giveaways? What's the purpose of them? Can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. So giveaways are important. I think when you're first starting out, but they're not necessary. The thing is when you set the giveaway, you set parameters in that giveaway. So you can, for anybody could do it. You can do it where if they enter, they have to follow you. Or you can do a buyer's appreciation giveaway, which you set up at the beginning of your show. And then anybody who has purchased in that show, you can do like a really special, like, thank you for buying from me. Only you guys are entered in. I think that when you're first starting out, doing the followers only giveaway or like must follow to enter giveaway is so important and critical in the business if your business model can afford it. The reason for that is the more followers you have, every time you go live, Whatnot notifies those people. So your biggest goal in the beginning is to stay consistent and get as many followers as possible. Poshmark and eBay, it doesn't matter how many followers you have. Instagram, it doesn't matter. On Whatnot, it matters because people are getting notifications on your behalf when you go live. So run those giveaways. Even if it's just like chapstick or a keychain or some stupid little thing that you picked up at the dollar store. People love free stuff and they will enter just to get free stuff.
Okay. What are some of the items that you've used before that were popular in your shows for giveaways?
So we give away a lot of Rachel Pelly scarves, like new with tag, like Rachel Pelly scarves. I had like a box of like 150 of those, and like we gave those away for months. I still have probably like 20 of them. So we gave those away. We've given away Gucci. We've given away Chanel. We've given away jewelry, perfume, stickers. I mean, I've given away a lot of stuff. Yeah.
Awesome.
Lots of handbags, Michael Kors, stuff like that.
Okay, perfect.
But when I first started, just so you know, I was not giving away those bigger ticket items. I was giving away packs of stickers. I was giving away little keychains that I found on like websites that I thought were cute, that were cheap, but it got people in and it helped grow the following.
Okay, that makes sense. All right. So you mentioned before that you, especially when you first started, you were doing shows like 2-3 times a week. What frequency, if someone's just starting out on Whatnot, do you think that that's a good frequency? Do you recommend more, less? What's a good consistent amount?
So that's hard to say for other people. I think for me, it was easy because I had the inventory to back it up. Not everybody has a warehouse. Not everybody has, thousands and thousands of items. And so I think if you can at least show up and make your show smaller, show up 3 days a week, try different timings that work for you and your schedule, and maybe just run 20 items. Keep them short, keep them to the point, and show up. But I do think a minimum of 1 a week is pretty crucial until you build up a following. Yeah. I think if you can at least show up and make your show smaller, show up 3 days a week, try different timings that work for you and your schedule, and maybe just run 20 items. Keep them short, keep them to the point, and show up. But I do think a minimum of 1 a week is pretty crucial until you build up a following. Yeah.
Okay. Something you just said, it didn't even dawn on me when I was coming up with the questions to ask you for this interview, but the length of your shows, I'm sure that has, I mean, if you go on and on and on and on, like there's got to be some kind of a flow there with like people coming in right off the bat, and then like there's like hills and valleys, right? Like
For
for
sure.
how long the show goes. So have you found like a sweet spot for yourself? Like how
No,
long?
no.
Okay.
I think it depends on the day. Last week, I think it was last week, we sold 155 items. I was on for like 3.5 hours.
Wow.
And I was like, this is great. And there was a steady flow of people. But then there's been other times where I've been on for an hour and, there's 75 people in there and it's just solid the whole time. But I think the longer the show, people can't just sit and watch. Not everybody doesn't have things going on. So I think if you have a decent following, you're going to be able to catch people at the times that work best for them. And so I don't think the time matters, but I do think if you were to promote it, I'm only on for an hour. I have to be done by this time. People will come in and go, how long have you been on? How many items have you ran? Because they don't want to get the tail end of the show and not collect on the discounted shipping. So
Okay.
people, like, if they know you're towards the end, they won't hang. So it is important to be like, hey, I'm only going until X amount of time. We only have 15 minutes left. So people kind of understand what time frame they can carve out for you.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. Kind of along the same lines, can you talk about the pace of your shows? So do you kind of try to keep the speed the same, the pace the same every time? Do you change it up based on your audience and the feedback you're getting from them and how they're responding?
Yeah. So again, it goes back to like reading the room.
Okay.
If it's real quiet in there and just like nobody's bidding, and to be honest, like I've never had a show where I haven't sold one thing, but I have been on a show where it was just like really crummy, and I was like, man, I don't want to be here, and like you could tell in my energy, so I just started speeding it. I was like, bid 10 seconds, sudden death. Like I just tried to like pick up the pace. I just started like flinging stuff. I was moving so fast that, but at that point I should have just cut my losses because I was like giving stuff away because I was like, I just want to sell this stuff. But I definitely think reading the room will help you. Like if people are engaging, it obviously you slow down because you're like engaging and you're laughing and like, it's a good time. But then there's other times where it's real quiet in there and you're like, somebody please just say something. And you just start moving real fast. You just get through what you got to get through.
Okay.
So read
So
the
if
room.
you have a show where it's a little like the vibe might be off a little bit, have you ended shows early to kind of cut your losses, like you said, or will you push through and try to make it work?
So on Whatnot, I've never had to end a show. Thank you for that, everybody who is there with me. But on Poshmark, I have tried to do multiple Poshmark live shows, and it is a beast over there. I will show up. I was on for like, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes, and I had fire inventory. I was like, we are going to do this right. We're going to kick it off with a bang. Like, it is going to be amazing. 2 people showed up, one of which was my friend Joni. Thank goodness for her. She showed up, and she's like, man, this is really like a hard crowd. And I'm like, this sucks. So I jumped off of Poshmark. I didn't sell one thing. I jumped off of Poshmark, went to Whatnot. Within 5 seconds of being on, I had 45 people in my show, and we sold out. It was a sold out show. The same stuff that I was running on another platform in a
Wow.
live setting.
So, all right, that's interesting. I didn't know that you were, trying on Posh as well. Like, what do you think the difference is, like, between Poshmark and Whatnot?
I think Whatnot really has their stuff together. I think Poshmark, no offense to them at all, I think their platform is obviously great. It's my number one selling platform other than Whatnot. And so I think they just wanted to so much be in the game of live selling that they almost like rushed into it. And I don't think a lot of people who aren't resellers understand the concept of live selling. And so I think that has like caused an issue kind of in the ability to be able to sell and be successful on it. Like I think some people are really successful and I think that that's great.
Mhm.
But I think it's a lot harder there to kind of get ahead, if you will.
Okay, interesting. All right.
Well, I think also people go to Whatnot for the live shows. Like,
Yeah.
People are going to Poshmark because they are looking for an item to buy. They're not necessarily going to Poshmark to jump into a live show.
Correct.
So I think Whatnot is mainly that's live show. So that's the audience. Like you already have that audience.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think it's also the only other thing that I've noticed is you have a lot of higher starts. Like people claim that they make more money on Poshmark, and I do believe them. I do believe that you probably make more on Poshmark because you do have non-resellers more prevalent on that app, like trying to buy stuff that they want. However, I also believe that people are smart consumers, and a lot of people are not going to pay a $15 start on a mall brand on Poshmark. Like it's just not going to happen. And so you see a lot of resellers or regular people trying to sell like Ann Taylor jeans for $45, not knowing that like that's not going to happen. So I don't think that maybe Poshmark gives very good direction either. Like when you unload to Whatnot, like you go through some sort of training to understand it, and it's not kind of just like thrown to the wolves and have fun, figure it out. I do think that they try to put their sellers' best foot forward so that they're successful too.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And but that got me thinking about when Poshmark just started doing live sales, all the people that were, complaining about the notifications, and a lot of the resellers were a bit upset that Poshmark started the live sales, mostly because of the notifications, it seems like, right? Like clogging their feed or whatever
You can turn them off, by the way. If you didn't know, so there's a glare on my floor, on my shiny floor, that is like hitting me in the face. I'm gonna move back. Hold on. I'm moving back. Oh, it's still there. Hold on. We're gonna figure this out. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, so, on Whatnot, like that's what it's there for. It is a live selling platform first and foremost, So yeah, that's really interesting. So something else that you said kind of jogged another thought that I had in preparation for this episode. I watched a lot of live sales on
Sure.
Whatnot from a lot of different sellers, none of which will be named. I did watch some of yours as well, but in one show that I went to, the seller was talking kind of like down about their inventory. And I'll say it, they're saying something like, I just want to get rid of this shit. You know what I mean? When to me, like watching their show, I was like, wow, like they don't care about the inventory, or it just like the way that they were talking about it, it was like they were just trying to, I don't know if I can explain this properly, but I feel like you understand what I'm saying. Like the whole vibe was off. It seemed like it wasn't a good time. Like the people that they had low views, like there weren't a lot of people in the room. I certainly was kind of like in and out after I heard them say that. But do you find that the way that you talk to, like, you obviously can't have a one-on-one like conversation face to face with people like we are right now,
Right.
but you're kind of going off of like what they're typing in the chat, right? And you're almost talking to yourself, So do you find that you have to be careful about like the things that you say when you're live? Does that make sense at all?
100%. So I would be lying if I'm like, hey, I don't care what this goes for. I just want to see it go to a good home. I think that
Yeah.
may have been a better way to like navigate, like, I don't want this shit, Do I swear in my shows all the time? But it very clearly says in my shows, explicit warning. Like we have the option to say like, yes, we swear. Yes, we talk about vulgar things, because I will get on a kick. I wanted to be on Saturday Night Live. So like me, I'm like, this is the best of both worlds. I get to sell stuff and I get to be funny. I get to be vulgar and make people laugh. And but I also think there's a time and place for that. If I know that my older viewers, my older generation viewers are on there, I do try to like tone it down. Read the room. You're being pretty much paid to put on a show. Not only are you selling items, but you're selling yourself. So if you're coming in with real low energy and you're just kind of like, here's this, and you're like Eeyore, nobody is going to get excited to buy from you, first of all. And one, please do not send that stuff to my house with that energy attached to it, because we will be staging before you come in. I just don't think that I think there's a time and place. And if you're just not in the mood or don't have an uppity personality, and I'm not saying everybody has to be like big and crazy, but I think how you perceive the items is how other people are going to perceive the items. And
Yeah.
You need to be like, this is the greatest thing in the whole world. Look, it has pockets. It's got a beautiful neckline. Like,
Yeah.
you're not only selling that, but you're selling yourself. And yeah, I think if you're like, this is shit, buy
Yeah.
this. Nobody's going to do that. But if you're like, hey, I don't care what this goes for at this point. Like, I just don't want to look at it anymore. Let's get it to a good home. Here's $1 start.
Yes.
Help me help you, and like
Yes.
kind of spin it in a way like that, I think would probably get you a lot further.
Yes, I absolutely agree. And we were kind of talking about before we started recording, like the intensity of some of the shows too. Like, I think you've said it a couple times, but reading your audience, like reading the room, like sometimes people like they don't want that intensity, the
Sure.
quickness, but other times like that's what they're there for. It's exciting and it kind of keeps the energy up. So I think a lot of it is probably just knowing your audience and what they're there for, right?
Yeah, I think there's a balance. I'm big and I'm loud and I have a big personality. And if you even follow me remotely on any platform, you know that I am not shy. I'm a big personality and I'm not for everybody. And I know that. But I also know that there are bigger personalities than myself on Whatnot, and people eat that up. And I applaud them. Like, you go. Like, go on. Like, that is amazing. You're being yourself. I think people can see when you're not being yourself. So I also think that there's a fine balance. Like, don't be something that you're not. Be yourself, because people are going to show up not only for your items, but they're showing up for you. Sometimes people are lonely and they just want interaction. There have been plenty of times I've been home alone. My husband travels a lot and I'm home alone a lot. And at night when the kids are sleeping, I'm like, dang, I'm just so lonely. I'll jump on Whatnot and just listen. Like, it's not even like I'm buying anything. It's just like, I want that interaction. I want to hear the talking in the background. And I do typically go for people who have big energy and are loud at times, but they're like, the voice deflection is like perfection on some of these shows. And people really have it dialed in. And I feel like I learned so much from so many resellers. Like, I'll see something in a show and I'm like, oh, I'm taking that. Oh, I like that idea, or I like that verbiage. And so I always have a pen and notebook on me all the time so I can like write things down so I don't forget.
Nice. Do you find that you're starting to get the same people following you and watching your shows over and over again?
Yes. Yeah, for sure. It's really cool because Whatnot they've come a really long way with their analytics. And
Okay.
at the end of each show, it'll tell us what our top sellers are, or our top buyers. And at the end of last year, you were able to see like who bought the most from you that year. And it's so funny because like my top 5 are like some of the most nearest and dearest people to me that have shown
Oh,
up at almost every single show, unwavering to me. They buy every single time. And I mean, they're spending good money, and like, it's like, I don't even know how you repay, people like that just like are so loyal to my brand and to me, and they've become friends. Like, I have their phone numbers, like we text, we're friends now. And I think that's really cool because I don't think I would have met these people outside of Whatnot otherwise, if that makes sense.
yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. So I want to switch gears a little bit. How do you keep track of your sales? Like in your shows, I believe you use like hanger tags. Is that how
Depending
you
on the
stay
show, yeah.
organized? Okay.
So
All right.
depending on the show, we do some preloaded shows, like the Rent the Runway stuff we do, because it has flaws. So you want to make sure that you're able to like recall those flaws, and it can get a little daunting if you don't preload the show. So
Okay.
those we use hanger tags. When we're doing like our return show or our pallet pull shows, or kind of just like a wing it show or a pop up, what we will do is I have Maddie. She's one of our workers. Maddie and Bailey, they're sisters. They actually live down the street from me. But Maddie's been with me 2 years. And so what I was doing singularly alone is we would grab plastic bags and we would number them 0 to 100. And then when it
Okay.
sells, we slap the sticker on it that says 01, which is the first item. And then we would put the username under the bag, and then we would line them. So behind the camera, it's just lines and rows, like by like numerical order of these shows. And so Maddie was like, there's got to be an easier way to do this. So she actually now sits in the background of my shows and she does all of it. And what she'll do is pile them based on who's buying by username. And so it has made it a lot easier. Would I be able to do that on my own running a show? No. So before I would just row them in numerical order with the numbers on them.
Okay. All right.
And
And that,
pre-number your stickers. Don't do it in the show because it really does. So we ran a test when we were doing it singularly, and I was doing my own rows. We were able to get through 75 items in 2 hours. When we had
wow.
Maddie, we got through 128 items with her doing it. So we doubled what we were able to sell. So keep that in mind too.
Kind of on the flip side of that, do you have a strategy on like the order that you run items in? So if you've like pre-numbered them, I'm assuming you stick to that, but like when you're kind of coming up with that, do you have a strategy like we're going to run this hot item first to kind of get the excitement up,
Yes.
or do you just do it randomly?
This is my favorite. I think this might be my favorite question. The reason that it's my favorite is because if the show, again, this goes back to reading the room, but like it'll be like hot, like you may have just gotten raided. Somebody from another show has just like kicked people over. Shout out to Josh, Harry Tornado. He like raids me all the time. And so like it's so exciting because like all of a sudden you have 40 people in your show, and then all of a sudden you have 300 in your show, and you're like, and so of course you have an item set aside that you're like waiting for the moment, it's the big moment, and like, hey, we're going to run this for $1. And it's like, Chanel or Gucci or, what have you. Like it could just be something really vintage and cool, but yes. So I will read the room. And if I feel like things are just selling really hot, I try to stick to those things. Like if I notice like the designer shoes are just selling better than the purses, we'll run 15 designer shoes in a row. And then somebody will be like, hey, can you run a purse again? Then we just run a couple purses, go back to the shoes. So again, it comes to reading the room and seeing what your buyers are getting excited about. Like what, people will send you hearts and you can kind of see them come
Awesome.
up on the screen. And so when you see those things, like keep doing what you're doing. Do not switch it up unless you're out of inventory.
Okay, that makes sense.
I just
Yeah.
got all
And
excited about it because I think about those moments for me, like when you're on and things are just moving and grabbing that hot item, and then all of a sudden you've sold $150 item that you definitely have had listed on Poshmark for 7 months and it didn't move, and you're like, oh, this is amazing.
that's great. Yeah, I imagine that it's a really good feeling,
Yeah, I love
You
whatnot.
mentioned someone like another seller rating you. Could you explain a little bit about like what that is?
Sure. So when a person raids you, what that means is when they end their show, instead of just ending the show and everybody dispersing, you can raid somebody and fill their show with the people who just came from your show. And I love it. I do it every show, at the end of every show. But my favorite thing is to do a tip raid, which I'm trying to get it to go viral. Somebody had brought it up to me. I don't remember their username. If they're watching this, I'm sorry. I don't remember your username. But somebody had said, hey, I want to start this thing called a tip raid. And it's where you go into a show that has really low counts, and everybody goes in and we raid them and we all tip them something, whether it's $1 or $5. We just tip them and try to like make their day. And I was like, sold, like say less. And so I love raids because you could get a new seller on there who's on their second show already feeling defeated, somebody who's just like, is this even worth it? And then you raid them. And then all of a sudden everybody's throwing them $1 or $5 for no reason except to just make their day. And now they have a whole new outlook on what reselling could be for them and like what live selling could be. Or, you've had people, you get people that cry just because you raided them because they've had nobody in their show the whole time. So raids are the most amazing part of Whatnot. And if they took it away, I would be PO'd.
So
Yeah,
how do you decide who you choose for that then? Like when
So
you're ready to end yours?
So what you can do is when you're done with your show, you can hit the drop down and go see who's live. And then what you do is it'll say choose who you're going to rate in the corner. And then you click that and it'll pull up all the shows. And it'll say how many people they have in each show. And so I always go for like sometimes you get the same people who have low counts, and there's a reason for that. You'll see the same people all the time with 2-3 people in. It's because they're not reading the room, and have I rated them? Yes. And then we learn that they are not reading the room and you don't do it again. But, you see somebody who's got 5 or 6 people in there and they're just really like fighting for air. And then you raid them and it's just like the light in their face, like it's infectious. And I do believe you only get supported by how much you support other people. And so like to be able to raid somebody who's got 5 people is like the best feeling.
That's great. It's like sharing the love, like
Yeah. Yeah.
that's awesome. I
And
love that.
I'm all about the light and the love.
You mentioned that you have Maddie and Bailey helping you, and I'm assuming that they mod for you. They're moderators in your shows. Do you have to have a moderator? Is it okay to do it without? Okay.
It is okay to do without. If I could give a recommendation though, I do find, and this has been trial and error, I do find that when we're running the pop-up shows that aren't preloaded, I do find if you're not putting what the item is in the chat and it's not pulling up because you didn't preload the show, I do notice that some people are watching at work, or some people are watching at the doctor's office, or some people are watching in the car. And sometimes, or they're just listening to it on mute. And if you're not putting it up and you're just holding it up, they have to constantly, what's the size? What's this? Sorry, I'm listening to it on mute. And I do think that it does probably hurt your sales. So I do notice that when we are doing the unloaded, not preloaded shows, that when we have a moderator kind of adding that information, that sales do tend to go a lot smoother. So
that's good information.
Yes, but I don't think it's necessary, but I do think it could hurt your sales.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know. I didn't think about that. A lot of people probably do, like on Instagram, I always find that if I'm doing stories, my views are always higher. Like the deeper the stories go, if I've used captions, and I should know that, being like super hard of hearing myself. Yeah. Like I can't hear anything. So I try to like read lips or read the captions or whatever. And a lot of people are on their phones at work too. So that's good. Like good information. How long would you say it took you from the time that you did your first Whatnot sale until you started to feel more comfortable being live and seeing consistent success?
Probably the third show. I feel like this is kind of different though, because I truly believe on Whatnot, it doesn't matter how much of a following you have. Like I truly believe that. Now I have dedicated friends that are just like, we're going to support you. Like if you're going on Whatnot, so are we. And I think that goes back to like, you're only supported by how much you support other people. And so I think if you're kind of like not telling people what you do and not mentioning like, and you have an Instagram account, you're not like, and you don't say, hey, I'm going live. Like nobody knows. Nobody can show up for you. Give them the opportunity to show up for you. And so I think the third show was when I was like, I got this, but I also am not scared to be behind camera because of the content creation side of my business and being behind camera, for YouTube in my previous life. And so I'm not scared to be behind the camera. So it was a very easy transition for me. But I could see like people who are more introverted and shy, like it being a longer adjusting period, especially talking to yourself like that. It takes some getting used to.
Okay, good to know. Do you use any other strategies to advertise your shows other than like what Whatnot provides? You said that if someone follows you, they'll notify the viewer or the follower if you go live. Do you utilize any other strategies to advertise your shows?
Yes. If you have an Instagram, post it on Instagram. Post it, let your family members know so that they can see you in action. I think it's important that you tell people what you do. That's the number one thing I've ever pushed. Since I started reselling and have been kind of an educator in that, is like, people don't know unless you tell them. And if you don't tell the lady at the nail salon, like, oh, I do consignment, you don't know that she worked for Chanel for 15 years and has a genuine runway bag where only 2 were made in production. And now she wants you to sell it. Like, tell people what you do and tell people that you're going to be there so that they can show up and support you.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Where do you see live selling going, specifically on Whatnot, in this next year?
I think it's going to blow up. I think we have seen such an increase in live selling because it's a different way of selling that is more personable. And again, I think you're not just selling the items, you're selling yourself. And so it gives people a sense of like community and belonging in a different way. Like they can come in when it's convenient for them. They can communicate when it's convenient for them. They can buy when it's convenient for them. And they also can get really good deals. I don't know. I just think it's such a different way to connect, but also make money. It's like QVC, but in real time, like with your friends.
Absolutely.
It's great. I love it. And I hope that it grows. I hope more people find out about it. And I hope that it's the new way, because I'm obsessed.
Yeah, I think it's, when Poshmark first kind of came out with the live selling thing, I was thinking to myself, like, who has the time to like sit here, right, and like watch someone sell these things? Like, if I want something, I'm just going to go search for it and buy it. I'm not going to sit here and watch someone talk for an hour, like showing a bunch of things that I don't want. And then I started kind of like getting into some whatnot shows. Like, I watched you a couple times. Like, it's not always about going in with the intention of purchasing something. It's, I think for a lot of us resellers, like you said, it can get lonely sometimes. Like, you're sitting here listing or photographing by yourself and you just have it on in the background. You know what I mean? And I'm sure that, especially if you're just starting out, it means a lot to you if, people that as resellers come in and like support you, even if they just have it on in the background, right? But it is like a sense of community, like you said, and like
it's like
you do have
it's
fun.
like walking into a thrift store. You don't know what's going to show up. You don't know what you're going to find, but there is something about Whatnot as a buyer, not a seller. As a buyer, you go into somebody's show and you're like, wait, are you kidding? They're selling those for $2. What? It's better than the Goodwill. Like I don't know. There is something so addicting by doing this and fighting somebody for an item, which I have fought many people for items that I didn't even want. I just wanted to win. So I think it's also a psychological thing. If you have a gambling problem, you probably shouldn't go on Whatnot.
It's quite addicting, I will say. It is quite addicting.
But I love it because I got this from Whatnot. This sweater is from Whatnot. A lot of stuff is from Whatnot, and I source there. I buy clothes for my husband, for my children. I buy gifts. I think for Christmas, like everybody got like a thrifted Whatnot item. So yeah, I've bought in everything from like a vintage Stanley measuring tape from like the 80s, all the way up to a Gucci bag. So, it's, you never know what you're going to get there. And that's what I love about it. It's like a flea market times 1,000.
Yep, absolutely. All right. So what are 3 things that you wish you knew about live selling before you started?
This is a good one. It doesn't have to be complicated. Just get on. Get comfortable, just start. Do not wait. Don't overthink it. Don't psych yourself out. Another one that I wish I knew is don't knock it till you try it. Because I was the epitome of like, F that. I am not. Absolutely not. This is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. And now I'm like, have you heard about what? I'm like a crackhead. I go to the grocery store. Oh, I sell on a platform called Whatnot. You want the link? Like, I don't know. I'm like a crack. I tell everybody about it. So don't knock it till you try it. And the other thing, I mean, I knew this already, but I guess if are you asking things I wish I knew or advice?
Oh no, it could be advice.
Okay. So I think the third thing that I would recommend, and this is more advice than it is like things I wish I knew, is make sure that when you are live selling, it is exciting when you start to like push things for $1 or push things for $15. Like, read the room. You are not going to sell things for Poshmark pricing. And if you do, it's because somebody really wants that item. So play around with it, but don't lose money. Understand what your business is capable of handling and what it's not. Like, yeah, running items for $1 is great, but also running things too high can be detrimental too. So you have to find that sweet spot, and it's different for everybody because people pay different things for their stuff. So read the room and know your business limitations for pricing.
Definitely. We have
I've
talked.
seen a lot of resellers lose their butt and then get really discouraged because they're like, I'm in the hole. And I'm like, well, you're an idiot. Why would
Yeah.
you sell it for $1? What are you doing?
We have talked a lot recently about knowing your metrics for your business, and maybe live selling makes sense for a lot of people, especially if you are able to get an influx of inventory for lower prices. But
Sure.
if you are paying a considerable amount of money for, like, let's say luxury items, and your buy cost is a bit higher, maybe it doesn't make sense for you to do live selling. You have to figure out if it makes sense, especially with the fees of the platform that you decide to sell on, if it makes sense for your business or not.
And I don't think live selling is for everybody.
Yeah,
I don't
I
think
agree
live
with that.
selling is for everybody. Like, bouncing right off of what you're saying, like, live selling is not for everybody. And it's not for every business plan. And trying to force it into your business plan could be detrimental to your business. Know your
Yes.
numbers first and foremost before you try to introduce anything new into your business. Try it. Maybe lose like $100. But don't be like throwing your eggs all in one basket and trying to like, oh, I'm screw Poshmark and screw eBay. Like, I'm all whatnot. Like, I would never do that ever.
Yeah.
There's never a point where I'm going to be like, I'm not doing all three.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes a lot of sense. I want to ask you a couple of questions that we received from our Facebook group members.
Oh yeah, yeah. I love that group. I love that Facebook group.
We're so glad that you're a part of it. I think you were probably one of the first members, actually.
I love
The
that.
The first question is from Brendan, and he says, for the average reseller, do you feel that it's worth it to do live sales? I feel it's only worth it for people with a following. I'd love a genuine answer to this question. I feel it's not worth most people's time and effort when they could just be listing, sourcing, etc.
Sure. So my answer to that is if you don't feel like it's worth the time, list those items. List the items, and after 90 days, whatever doesn't sell, you're already 90 days into it. Try to recoup your money back and try reselling. Try a live show. Try to push those items on a live platform for whatever you got them for. If you bought the item for $4, start it at $5. You'll break even, but at least try it. Granted, like, yeah, you want to be successful, but if it's already been listed for 90 days, get rid of it. And if you make a profit, even better. Now you have money to go get something that's actually going to sell on the platforms that you're already listing on. I don't think your following matters. I have a hard time speaking on that though, because I'm not a huge content creator by any means, and I don't have a huge following, but like, I do think I have more than maybe the average seller. And so I feel weird when I say it doesn't matter, because it sounds kind of hypocritical, because I do have a decent following and I know that no matter what I do, people are going to follow me there. But I have seen many resellers with less than 200 followers blow it out of the park. Not only that, we have 3 resellers on Whatnot now that have no social media and they are crushing it. So no, I don't. I think people show up for you. So
Yeah, I agree with that. And it really doesn't take, if you have, let's say you have 20 or 30,000 Instagram followers, there's no way that all of those people are going to follow you over to Whatnot, right? So
no way.
it really
Less
only
than
takes a
10%.
handful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it takes
Less
a
than
handful
10%.
of people. Exactly. Yep. So I wouldn't really worry about followers, on social media either, because it is only going to take a couple of like raving fans to follow you on Whatnot, for you to be successful over there, it sounds like.
I agree with that.
The next question is from Ronnie, and he says, how long did it take you to get a consistent following and viewers?
I think after my first 2 months, I think I had, initially when you get on Whatnot, you want to hit 1,000 followers as quick as possible. As soon as you hit 1,000, I think it's 1,000 followers and 1,000 items sold, you get instant payout. So your goal when you get on Whatnot is to just blast out as many shows as you can, make as many sales as you can, make as much money as you can in those first shows until you hit that number. So I definitely believe that consistency is key in the beginning to grow your following. I think it's different for everybody. Again, like who you are on camera and the items that you're selling plays a huge part in who's going to follow you and who's not. So come with the energy that is authentic. Don't be weird. Don't be weird. People can tell that you're being weird.
Yeah. Exactly. So it's kind of like if you're consistent with your shows, you're going to build a more consistent following and viewers,
Yeah.
right?
Because people will
Okay.
know when you're showing up. The only other thing, piggybacking kind of off of that, is make sure you have shows booked. Book your shows out. Even if you're not going to have them on that day, just book them out for like 2 months. Book them out 2 months out. And then change the date as like I have probably 14 shows ready to go, locked and loaded, so people can pin them. So people can show up. Give people the opportunity to show up for you. And by doing that, make it easy for them to come to your shows. Have your shows there, booked out 2 months, and then when you do a pop-up, surprise, mother effer, here I am. And then they're getting a notification no matter what. And they're like, hey, I thought this was in March. No, we're doing it today. So like, even if you have to do it that way, make sure you have your shows booked out and kind of have a theme with those shows. Make sure you have like a nice background. Make sure that you have like nice verbiage and like let people know what to expect in the show. Is it a pop-up show? Is it vintage? Is it going to be Rent the Runway? Is it going to be designer? Is it a mix? Are you doing low starts? Like make sure you add those things because I think it gives people an opportunity to support you.
Love that. All right. What do you feel is the biggest hurdle to being successful at live selling?
Ooh, making money.
That's a good one.
I think Whatnot, depending on the show, like you can make good money or you can't. Making money and getting people to show up. That is the hardest thing. Is obviously you want every show to be successful, just like you want every sale, everything you buy at a thrift store to sell. But that's just not realistic, and that's not how it goes. And so I think the biggest hurdle is finding items that you know for sure are going to sell, praying that they sell, and then making sure that people show up to buy them for them to sell. That's just like closing the sale is the biggest hurdle, is getting on a show and being like, we're going to sell out today. And then you're like, we've sold 7 things in the last hour. It's time for me to go. So yeah. Closing the sale.
Okay. Have you ever had a show where like you came in hot, you were energetic, like you were doing everything right, but it ended up being kind of disappointing, like you didn't sell as much as you thought, or like the prices things were selling for weren't what you wanted, and so you ended up a little disappointed? And how did you handle that, like going into your next show to like psych yourself up again?
Okay, so yes, this has happened more times than I can count. I would say 1 out of every 10 show is this way. And I just think also it's about timing too. You got to think about, so I do my shows typically in the morning because I'm a mom. My kids are at school. I'm not going to do a show when I have children running around. We're in Whatnot to avoid our kids, okay? We're in Whatnot to disappear from the chaos that is behind us. So I try to typically not do it when my kids are around. And so I do my shows in the morning, and sometimes I'll start at 10 o'clock, but I also have to keep in mind that most people on the West Coast are still sleeping. So if I'm not going until 12 or 1:30, I'm not hitting West Coast at all. So I think timing plays a huge role into that. And I've had plenty of shows where I'm like, dang, like I really thought that this was going to be the one. You got the music going, you're all dressed up, and then it's like, crap. There's been plenty of times I've called my husband after a show and he's like, how was it? I'm like, shit. It's the worst show ever. Like I could have just stayed home and hung out with you guys, because sometimes I'll do like night shows or whatever to capture the spread of the West Coast and the other time zones. And, they'll be in the pool, like hanging out, and I'm like at the warehouse. And then I come home and I'm all defeated. And he's like, well, next time will be better. I'm like, screw you. But, I think in order for me to get over that, I keep showing up, because if I don't show up, I'm not going to be able to change it.
Right. Absolutely. So keep going, keep pushing through. It kind of sounds like it's going to happen, eventually you're going to have a disappointing show, but if you don't keep showing up, then you're never going to know the success you could have had, right?
Sure. And I think too, if you don't have a success, or if you don't have a disappointing show, you're not reselling right. Like it humbles you. It makes you look at your business and makes you do better. So I am grateful for kind of the crap shows because I get to go back to the drawing board and be like, what didn't work here today? And I'm able to
Yes.
make it better.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Our last question we've asked you this before, but we're going to
Okay.
kind of tailor it more to like whatnot. So if you could give your fellow resellers one piece of advice on how to turn their paycheck into a day check as far as whatnot goes, what would it be?
Okay, I have this one written down, so I have to go look really quick because I didn't write it down.
No
Hang on,
problem. Take
I
your
wrote
time.
this one out. I was locked and loaded for this one. Okay, so there is this quote, and it says, the only difference between a rich person and a poor person is what that person does in their spare time. And so I think if you want to make your paycheck a day check, it really is dependent on what you're doing in your spare time. Work-life balance, sure. Home life balance, sure. But if you can dedicate 20 minutes a day to something outside of what you're already doing to make an income, in a year, you've already put in so many hours into that, and it could be something that could get you to quit your job. So whether you're poor or rich, what you do in your spare time matters.
I love that answer. Absolutely. Oh my
I
gosh.
thought it out. It is a quote that I saw, and I was like, I'm taking that. I'm not going to own it, but I'm going to own it.
That is wonderful. Thank you so much. This was so
Thanks for having
informative.
me
I
on
think it's really
again.
going to help people. Yeah,
This is
in
my
our
favorite
community.
podcast. I get so excited when you guys ask me to come on. Your growth has been amazing, and anybody who's not watching it and listening to this podcast is doing themselves a disservice for their business. So thanks for letting me be a part of it.
So where can everyone find you on Instagram, whatnot? What's your handle? It's Revibe Tribe across all
Revibe
platforms.
Tribe, baby. That's all it ever is.
We
No,
will link
Revibe Tribe.
everything
I think on
below.
Instagram it's like revive.tribe, and then on whatnot it's just Revive Tribe. So we keep it simple. Simple and to the
Awesome.
point.
Perfect. We'll link everything for everyone if anyone wants to follow you. Thank you again, Ashley, so much.
Thank
We
you.
greatly appreciate your time.
I appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me on.
All right, guys, that's a wrap on today's episode. Thank you so much for listening to the Paycheck to Daycheck Reselling Podcast.
Anything we mentioned in this episode will be linked down below in the show notes or description down below.
Be sure to share this episode with anyone you think it will help and follow us on social media at P2D Podcast.
Thanks again for listening. Keep working towards that day check.